Java cohort, welcome to Saturday, which means that it is time for Pilum Teaches DCS. And given the pending arrival of the Cold War Germany map, we are going to take a little bit of time today and look at the F-4 Phantom 2 again. And we're going to be focusing on a few things here. Hello, Frost, welcome. We're going to be looking at the AGM-45 Shrike, making use of its Willie Pete charge to try and aid in follow-up attacks on a target area. We're going to be making use of the Pave Spike pod, and since we're playing on a 1975-ish arms limited map, it's going to be the slower pod, which, if we can do work with the slower pod, we can definitely do it with the faster one. So a little bit of general flying tips for the F-4. Because we have focused on specific weapon systems, delivery modes, that kind of thing in the past. So we can catch up on those videos as well, dancing through YouTube and all of that. But we're going to be talking about some of the gauges there, countermeasure settings, some historical notes there for the aircraft itself. So for now, let's go ahead and flip things over into DCS so we can see a little bit about what's going on. Let me start out with a little treat here for folks, because last week, understandably, I was not up for our usual Pilum Teaches stream because I was here at Nellis, standing right about here in this spot, watching the air show for Aviation Nation 2025, which is a good time, and pretty prime vantage point, I should say, being able to watch everything that went on. But that's not why we're here, so let's go ahead and get back to our chariot here before we unpause things and get rolling. Today we're going to be flying the McDonnell Douglas F-4E Phantom 2, and it is a 1975's arms limited map, so we do have fewer weapons available compared to our slightly more modern counterparts, but we are rocking this beautiful German skin here for the Westphalen. I like the camo pattern on it. It's been working really well in Afghanistan. Looks very pretty. But let's talk about what we're actually using today. So up here on our special rails, we have a pair of AGM-45 Shrikes. The seeker heads and settings and things we're going to be looking at in greater detail here in just a minute once we actually get back into the jet. We are carrying a Pave Spike targeting pod in one of our Sparrow wells. And thanks to updates and everything else, it is no longer a Wi-Fi pod, but it is actually hard bolted onto the frame. It's a nice touch. We're also carrying GBU-10s, so we're going to be designating those for ourselves and see how close we can get to our target. Usual defensive complement of AIM-9 Sidewinders, in this case they're AIM-9 Limas. We're also carrying 3 Foxtrot Sparrows, since we are carrying that pod. Centerline, we're carrying some M117 World War II vintage 750-pound bombs, because it's Korean War vintage too. But should be a good time to put those to use as well. So let's go ahead and get back into the jet. We'll unpause for a minute. So let's see if I can pull that up here without... I cannot. Alright. Both of our Shrikes are configured the same way. So we're going to be using a Mark 49 Mod 1 Seeker Head, which should allow us to track an SA-8, which is our victim of choice here for the day. But new, or newer, to the AGM-45 is this Willie Pete marker charge, which you can set to installed or not installed. With the Willie Pete charge installed, what the missile will do is it will fly to its target area and try and get as close as it can to do the business. And as long as you know by about how short the weapon system is, or long, or whichever, whatever way it works out, you can follow up using the marker charge as a visual guide to attack your target area with either cluster bombs or iron bombs or what have you, whatever weapon system you're going to be using. And the charge lasts about a minute, so it doesn't give you a whole lot of time. It's most ideal when you're working with more than one person, So try and keep that in mind as you're making use of those charges there. All right, let's go ahead and put our helmet on. Bring the canopy down. Of course, our jet, we've already gone through the startup procedure. We have already done a stored heading waypoint alignment. But we're going to talk about one of these other panels that we've not really used a whole lot before. And a few of these are important.
Locked, lights out, and stripes aligned.
We have the aural tone control, which will control both of the Shrike Seeker head's noise that it's going to give you, as well as the AOA system. So you can adjust the volume of that to your comfort. And this panel right here in front of it is our countermeasures burst and salvo. I've actually increased the burst count from 1 to 4 and left the interval the same at this 3 that we can see over there for flares, which should kick out more flares per dispense. I'm also going to do the same. So I'm going to bump that all the way up to 8 for our chaff. All right, so we can make use of a little better puffs there. All right, so our target area for the day, before we taxi out and take off, is one of our signatures. We're going to be coming out here to this objective we built at Yucca Pass, because it's pretty good all around for training. And our threat of choice today is the SA-8 OSA. Hopefully we're going to be able to hit him squarely with a Shrike, or at least squarely enough that we can follow up on him. But we do have other targets that are around here, to include BMPs, Fire Cannon KS-19 battery, all of our usual folks. Otherwise, a fairly nice day out. Got some high clouds. Shouldn't be too great of an issue for us there.
Just to double check, are we hitting the deck on this one?
Well, don't you worry there, Frost. On the Afghanistan map that we've been flying on, they are actually present.
Roger.
Now, the fun thing in developing the Afghanistan mission that I've been working on, which you can see listed on the server list yet, I don't have it quite ready to the point where I want to put it more publicly available for people to use. But it's called Game of Thirds, because it's 3 factions kind of fighting in the general area. You've got insurgents, Iran, and then NATO forces. With Iran occupying most of the west, the insurgents most of the middle, and NATO most of the east. It's kind of a double entendre, which is fun because, you know, they've only released the map in third so far. Which is not quite the most brilliant way to do that, I don't think. Alright, takeoff trim is set. Been a short flight there for us, but that should be enough time to talk about some of our other things while we're on the way.
Engine's good. Airspeed's coming alive. 80 knots. Speed 100 now.
150 knots. Nose is coming up.
Gears moving. Flaps up. Gear up. All right, those are some nails. 2 o'clock.
All right, nice smooth takeoff. Roll out towards our waypoint here. Adjust our trim a little bit so we can get a nice steady climb. Alright, so some of the things that we've got going on here, because we're going to be using the Shrikes. First thing we're going to do is move our weapon selector to direct. And we're going to set our weapon wheel
nails, 2 o'clock, and nails,
to ARM.
2 o'clock.
We're also going to come on down here underneath our standby ADI, and we're going to toggle the flight director into the horizontal. What this does is it puts a couple of needles on our little ADI ball, and those are tied to the Shrike Seeker head in terms of what it can see if it's picking up a radar return in the frequency band that the warhead is tuned to, which is important because that's how that system works. And we're going to use that as our steering marker and try and put the cross within 3 degrees of our intended target. This is where we kind of touch on some of the historical stuff for the F-4, because the F-4E really represents the transition between very late 3rd generation aircraft and the evolutionary step towards 4th. Because a lot of the teen series aircraft that we're more familiar with, like the F-14, the 16, the 18, the 15, all that, are very much 4th gen platforms. And they combine a lot of features like a proper head-up display, a HOTAS that has all kinds of buttons, bells, and whistles attached to it. But those are lessons that really came from the F-4, because as we take a minute, we'll pause here to do it, and we look around the cockpit, we've got countermeasure settings all the way over here off our left hip and behind us a little bit. Like we have to reach over with our right hand, try and make these settings adjusted. Or, try and fold our left arm to try and come back this far to use it. Our lighting panels for exterior lights are all back here, deep, deep, deep in the well behind the right hip, as well as our, compass adjustment settings and everything else. We've got kind of lights and bells and buttons and all of this kind of nonsense spread all the way around the cockpit in what almost looks and feels like a haphazard way. Like there's nothing ergonomic about any of that. But one of the other things that was important for this aircraft And for those who've flown it any length of time and started using the different weapon systems, you see where a lot of buttons serve more than one function. For example, the air-to-air refueling disconnect. That's what that button is on the stick. That's its primary function. But when you're using Mavericks and you have the Mavericks set up and they're ready to rock and everything else, you press that button so that you can use this hand control to slew the seeker head. So it's kind of a double function. And we see that with a lot of different buttons around here. Like there's a pinky switch which controls the selector for air-to-air mode for guns, IR missiles, or radar missiles. And, you know, at the time, the only effective radar missile that we were using was the Sparrow for air-to-air. And the only effective infrared missile we were using was the Sidewinder. And I phrase it that way because the AIM-4 Falcon, despite looking kind of cool and a little bit like an Americanized R-60 or a miniature, a super mini Phoenix or a super mini Maverick, is really a garbage pail kind of missile that was designed for one purpose and one purpose only, and that was shooting down bombers, where you can afford to hover over the target for several seconds before it can acquire. The Air Force didn't like using Navy equipment, and the Sidewinder and the Sparrow were Navy pieces of equipment. But they were, more or less given to them, and we started moving towards a more joint system for all of our weapons and everything else, because it just made more sense to do things that way. Why build two of a different kind of bomb when you can just build one kind of bomb and share it between everybody else? So there's a lot of things where you can see the older way of doing things, which is a bunch of rotators and knobs and dials and everything else. Very much not in an ergonomic place. The F-86 and the F-5 really kind of spring to mind for older platforms that kind of rely on the same sort of, well, yeah, you just got a weapon knob here. You just got to rotate this to rockets when you want to use rockets. Like, well, what do you do in the heat of the moment, and you're trying desperately to keep your head outside the cockpit while also fumbling for a set of switches to try and set yourself up for guns or missiles or what have you? And that's where we kind of take those things and pair them together and go, well, what if we put more things on the control columns? Okay, that's working out. What if we made that, like, built from the ground up to use that technology? That's where we start getting into the more modern HOTAS type systems. And when you look at like an F-16's throttle quadrant, it's got all those different buttons, knobs, and everything else. Everything right at the fingertips for the pilot. Really starting to see the advantages of being able to get to that quickly. The other thing that I've done in advance, and we're going to be using it here in a little bit, is I have preemptively set my reticle depression to 17 mils. Any of the electro-optical equipment on board the aircraft that you're using, whether you're dropping hobos, the GB-8, or any of the Walleye series of bombs, or the targeting pod, the rough bore sight 0 point for this pipper is aligned with where it's looking is 17 mil dots. If you're using the Maverick, which is the only kind of exception to that, especially because you get Maverick A's and B's, which are EO, and then the Maverick D's, which are infrared, it uses a 45 mil dots. So changes depression down to 45. And now this pipper is aligned for the Maverick, which is useful for the pilot to have, as typically that's more of a Wizzos, well, except for the Walleye and the GB-8. It's more a Wizzos primary function, is to try and use those different systems and the targeting pod and all that, but you have to remember too that this is pave spike, and pave spike is very basic. Put ourselves up on an AP hold here. Pave spike does not have any of the technology that even something like an early model lantern pod has, where you can go, I want you to look at this waypoint. and it goes, okay, cool, I'll go look at these GPS coordinates. That sounds great. Zip. All right, we're looking there. Everything you do with that pod is going to be super dead reckoning. So it's kind of a matter...
New bogey, left 30, 44 miles, 19,500.
It's kind of a matter of working with your pilot
Definitely friendly.
and utilizing what systems are available on the aircraft, because in the back seat there is a setting where you can have it look for the 12 o'clock position or a 9 o'clock position, and have your pilot orbit over a point and go, okay, cool, do you see this mountain? Yeah, I do. All right, cool. Your target is, 500 meters south of that mountain. Hey, Shepard. So it's like, all right, cool. We're going to put the pod in that 9 o'clock slew mode. All right, I see your mountain. And then they're going to manually slew that pod over and go, okay, cool, I see your target that you're talking to me about. Well, in the 12 o'clock position, if you've got the bore sight set correctly and everything, you just point the nose at it, put the pipper over the top of the target and go, that. And then your Wizzo can, start trying to track it and keep it going. All right, we are actually getting feedback now on the Shrikes.
New bogey, left 30 degrees, 45 miles.
And just to make sure that we don't piss both of them away there, I'm going to go ahead and select just the one pylon.
IFF is positive he's a buddy.
And I'm going to go ahead and pause here for a minute and sit here and see what we're doing. So right now we are 11 miles away. I'm going to want to shoot this Shrike much closer than that, probably a little closer to 6 to 7 miles. One of the other things to keep in mind, especially with the Shrike, is that it is a anti-radiation missile that is built on the AIM-7 Sparrow's body. And as a result of that, it does not have the best motor in the world for distance. It's also not harm, so it's not something that we can just kind of go, yep, I want to kill that system, and then pull the trigger and let it go do its thing. It's very basic. It kind of combines the worst of both worlds in terms of the harm and the sidearm, where you do have to be very tight on your parameters to get that weapon out of there. We have mountains that are going to be protecting us more or less. So my hope is that we can come in at a moderate altitude, dip down behind the mountains, get as close as we can to Mr. SA-8, pop up a little bit inside of our effective reach of that weapon system, let him have it, and roll out and away using the mountains for cover. Hopefully we'll kill him with the Shrike, but if we don't, that Willie Pete charge should be close enough that we can see it and either follow up with our second Shrike or follow up with bombs. Go ahead and jump back into the cockpit here, and we will execute. AP off, plane in hand. Clear the master caution. You can hear that oral tone.
Mud on our nose, 12 o'clock.
It gets louder as you get closer to the center line of the target. That's not an indicator that you are in range, it's just an indicator that you're pointing at it. And that's more or less right on top of him. Magnum.
We got a stinger right on our nose. SA-8.
And he hit us. That's okay. But we can see that our Shrike landed a little short. But it is putting out a nice little Willie Pete charge. Pipper was more or less right on top of our target. But I think having a little better success, we might try and aim over the top of our target in the hopes that the weapon will fall on top of our target and hit him. So let's go ahead and reset on that. And adjust controls. The short flight will be up there soon. And a lot closer to it than I would have liked, but that's also one of the things about the Shrike is just about any time you're going to employ that weapon, you're going to be inside the threat range of whatever it is you're trying to use it on. Because again, it was kind of a stopgap method, and while it was better than dropping iron bombs alone, or rockets, which was predominantly how that business was done before, it was not a substantive improvement. All right, let's go ahead and set ourselves up here again. Carry the same sort of weapons load. We're actually going to change it up a little bit. Carry one Maverick and one Shrike. Set it up for the right band. We'll throw in the Willie Pete charge. Balance the aircraft load here. Give ourselves a minor fuse delay.
Request rearming.
And bippity boop.
Copy.
The countermeasures a little bit. Shrike fails. We're going to use the Maverick, so let's just go ahead and set that up in advance.
Rearming complete.
What alignment are we going for? Stored heading alignment.
Roger.
Historically speaking, the Shrike had a hit rate of just about 25%. It was not
Carts loaded, sir.
a particularly accurate system. I'll make sure my dials are all set. Carts are loaded, so let's go ahead and hold the igniters and bang, bang.
If only the generators would go. Okay.
Jester buddy, I know we just got killed on a training flight out there a minute ago, but your sarcasm's not necessary.
Canopy down and locked, lights out, and stripes aligned.
Okay, I believe it is our left pylon that has the Shrike on it. It sure is. Go and set those up here real quick. And while that's going through alignment, let's go ahead and set down a marker point so I can get him to steer us to where we need to go. Listening for a telltale click from Jester that he has flipped the alignment system over to the primary gyro sync. Set our takeoff trim here.
Roger. Wheel chocks out. Okay, sir, you're all set.
There's the click.
Have a safe flight.
Prime sync clear. Go ahead. All right, ready to taxi.
I like catching him on that one before he says he's ready to go. I suppose one of the other ironies about the Shrike system, just in general, is
You doing some trench running on this flight?
you could get a little bit more range out of it with a loft attack, but the automatic release parameters for the loft are not always on time, for want of a better expression. And just about anything else that you could shoot with the Shrike is probably close enough to drill with a Maverick. Now, one of the advantages, at least, of the Shrike is not having the 3-minute warm-up time that the Maverick possesses before it's actually ready for use. So it's a little more immediate. But those are the kinds of ranges that we're looking at when it comes to employing the system. Slats and flaps coming out.
Engine's good, airspeed off the peg. 80 knots. 100 knots.
Nose is coming up. And flying away. Gears coming up, flaps coming up.
Okay, nails. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Gears moving. Gear up. Flaps up.
Yeah, I might have to modify the skin here a little bit to put all the other fun bits on it.
Roger. Steering set for diversion.
I don't mind the dark gray at all. There's just something about how ubiquitous the 91 gray is that just kind of makes it too plain. I think this is actually JG75. I'm gonna have to look at the skin again to see which one it is, but it's the Westphalen one, which I like a lot. Alright, so once more, greater feeling with less suck. Flight director. Star arms on. Pick up the pace a little bit to get back to where we were. And resume our AFES feature presentation. They don't actually sponsor any of this nonsense.
All right, those are some nails. 2 o'clock. And nails. 2 o'clock.
Trying to get a little more altitude this time, and we'll see if we can't engage him from outside of his threat reach. If we can get the Shrike off and withdraw if we have to follow up with the Maverick, that should give us the room that we need. Personally, one of the things that I kind of enjoy for the nostalgia factor flying the F-4 is just how much the front end of the cockpit looking out the front glass reminds me of the Su-25. You got crap everywhere, there's gauges everywhere, you've got frame parts everywhere. It's all of the claustrophobia plus more fortunate son. And perhaps nowhere to run to. Alright, we're getting closer to where we need to be again. 21 miles out. Now peek over the nose and look down it a little bit. That's generally speaking our target area. And the little square brick there, just off the nose and underneath that square gray patch, is about where we need to be looking. Okay, he is up and looking.
We have a new bogey. Left 20 degrees, 49 miles, 23,500.
Lose a lot of altitude very quickly.
IFF's valid, Daddy's a friendly. Okay, that's a new bogey. Left 15, 49 miles, 27,000.
Throttle's idle, pushing the nose over.
Positive IFF return. Target is a friendly. Mud on our nose, 12 o'clock. SA-8.
And that Shrike just fell. Good job, Shrike. That's our SA-8. And there's our Shrike. Ended up at about the same distance as the last one we shot. That's okay. It at least alerts us to a SAM in the presence. And even if it doesn't hit with the WP charge, you can at least get people looking at us in the right direction. As long as it ends up close. Just waiting on that arm light to come up. And we'll switch over to the Mavericks. don't need our flight director on. Going to turn that one off. Fun part with the AGM-65Bs that we're using today is that they come with a 4x zoom already. And that is fixed, so you can't change it. The 65As just have a 1x zoom. Alright, weapons up. Set the TV, pull the front trigger so we get the Maverick seeker head looking. Yeah, we can play with the brightness a little bit. Try and make things pop out a little more. And our victim is over here. Captured the building next to him. That's him. Rifle. And off it goes. Roll away here to the south. One dead Oso. Now we've got about 6,000 pounds of gas, so we got plenty of time to play a little bit. We set ourselves up for our outer pylons, because we're going to be using the bombs next. Quantity selector is set to 1, as I only want to drop 1 bomb at a time. We're going to set our weapons select or weapons release to target find and roll this around to bombs. Take a minute here to pause, and we're going to talk about some bindings because those are important. Because otherwise this is a backseat only job. Right now there are some temporary Wizzo binds that you can use, which is going to be your hand control slew up, down, left, right. If you have an additional axis that you want to use for it that you're not already using for any number of other things in this aircraft, you can take the time to do that. You're also going to want to make sure that you bind the half and full action triggers to a button somewhere so you can tell Jester, to turn on and activate the laser and all that good stuff. The other important bind that we're going to be using is the Jester context action. Short hold, double click to get him to catch the pod in a given direction and recenter the pod and put it back in snowplow if we miss our target. And again, I like to play with the brightness there a little bit, try and get rid of any harsh glare in the middle of the display. Oh, that's right. There's one more control, and that is the challenge button you want bound. The challenge button toggles between your 2 zoom modes for hopes and dreams. Now there's hopes, and there's dreams. It's only got the 2 stages. The half action tells Jester to bring the pod back to center, which is another way that you can go about doing it. And the full action will target the thing and actually turn the laser on there for you with an extra tap. When both lines are blinking like that, it is laser on and doing its thing. And then it's a matter of making the 2 lines meet, and that should be the release point where the bomb falls off the jet. One of the other things that I like to do as well, just to make extra certain that we're good, 4,035 feet, is go into the bombing table, change our delivery to target find, estimate a run-in speed and true knots airspeed, and about 450 is not the worst. But most important of all is the target's altitude. They're using Gaboo 10.
Yep.
Those things should tell Jester, the approximate expected altitude. Even though you're using the laser to correct for it so you get better ballistic information. There's a group of shilkas that are down kind of in that area, and that's going to be the intended target for our first bomb. All right, let's go ahead and brighten this up just a little bit. And there they are.
Captured.
So he is captured now. It takes him a second to realize that. You will have to manually slew the pod about a little bit. Pickle. And as this bomb pitches over, we should see it hook. And I flew way out of parameters, so it's probably not going to be very helpful for us. Ballistically, it fell on something else and blew it up, but we got one more bomb.
Captured. Roger.
This time I will fly to actually make that damn thing hit, and we will just trust the fact that it's on 1688. Actually, I can double check that real quick by jumping into the back seat. 1688 is there. So it is actually set correctly. We'll extend most briefly and then come back and make a run in on those shilkas. See, a lot of the more modern pods, you can basically go, I want it in point track. I really, really want this to die. Pave spike is a lot more hands-on of an affair. Okay.
Captured.
Here they are. Bombs away. some tracers coming up, making some fine adjustments there, and impact. That one hit where it needed to go. Generally speaking, it is better to let somebody else do the lasing while somebody else does the bombing. It is possible to do it on their own, but it can be a little difficult to coordinate, as we've seen. Alright, we're going to go and leave it in bomb mode, but we are going to change our release to DT. And we'll put this back to a radar display. And we're going to adjust our ripple there to 2. DT uses the radar on board the jet to get ranging information and allows you to make very quick, more precise bombing runs with your weapons. It's really best for iron bombs, which can include things like cluster munitions. You know what cluster bombs we do get on board the F-4. I don't recommend it for snake eyes or high drag bombs really of any kind. So it's really kind of slicks territory. But it does allow you to really get into the down and dirty real fast. And again, we're going to be using that Jester contextual button, which is going to tell Jester, I want you to capture the radar over the Pipper. As you can see, it's free floating a little bit, so the mil dots don't matter there on that. And it's got a range for this kind of work of about 10 miles or so to lock onto a target. You're really not going to get many targets that you're going to do that with from that range. But you can get sometimes up to 5 miles from dropping on your target. So I've hit the contextual button. He's captured the target. I'm now going to hold the pickle button and pull up, slow and smooth. Bombs are off the jet. I can now roll out. And our Pipper was off a little bit, so they went a little long. Let's do that better for our next pass. Occurs to me he might still be on GPU 10, which is a different drag coefficient.
Sure.
Okay, zoom in a little more. I'm just short of it here.
And captured. How we doing, man? Fuel check?
You're looking better. Damaged one of them. It's not going to be the, you know, put it right down the tank hatch with it. You can get a lot closer.
Okay, captured.
Okay, that did the job. Gun selected and gun is armed. Let's go ahead and head back to Creech and we'll get more weapons and see what else we can do. Creech will be a little closer than Nellis. Let's go ahead and dial its TACAN in. 87 X-ray. There we go, set the TACAN navigation. Go ahead and save all our things. Cage the HUD pipper. Yeah, iHort makes a very valid point there. The importance of keeping the wings level, you know, following your 3 dots there as much as you can. The more accurate you fly the pattern, the more accurate your bombs will be. There's other things that can affect the bomb's flight path and everything else, up to and including the wind, especially on longer drops. And over a long enough period of time, even a little bit of wind can blast them off a little bit, where they will either go too long or too short or what have you. There's a reason why you end up having a bomb truck-like quality with the F-4. You can carry upwards of 22 Mark 82s on board the aircraft, 13 or 14 Mark 83s. I want to say maybe 15 to 18 or so Mark M117s. Like, you can carry an absurd number of bombs for the aircraft, but you're almost never dropping them singles, unless you're dropping precision munitions and all that. Yeah, it was really kind of a major change Vietnam War, where we started using laser-guided bombs and electrically optical guided bombs, Mavericks. Like, it really upped the game for having weapons go exactly where you tell them to go. Because, you know, in World War II, it was, we're going to put a bunch of bombers in formation. Whenever the leader drops, you drop them. Yeah, we're just going to put hundreds of bombs over the top of this target in the vain hope that 2 of them hit it. And it doesn't always work out the way that you want it to. Alright, let's go ahead and go through some landing work here. We're going to adjust the trim up a little bit. We're going to move the seat up to maximum height. Gear's going to come down. I'm going to adjust the trim a little bit again. Flaps are coming down. There's a YouTube video out there on the F-4 Phantom and precision weapons in Vietnam that the Air Force put out in the immediate aftermath of it. And, you know, the guy who's in there, it's Major White, and he's very excited about accuracy and teamwork and all that, and justly so. But it really does kind of highlight the differences between early and late war and the power of precision-guided munitions. Like, there was a bridge out there that we had been trying to attack with standard iron bombs and sent hundreds of missions at it, and we're just never able to knock it down. And, you know, you go in with a handful of jets that have precision bombs and manage to knock it completely, or 11 spans of it or something like that, down in one sortie. Which, you know. Yeah, no, we'll worry about the link here a little bit later on. And then there's another one out there too that's called F-4 Spin Characteristics, which is kind of done in the style of a documentary within a documentary. And that talks a lot about flying the F-4E and things to watch out for. That's also a good one to watch for the info dump.
Okay, gear, flaps, pressure, warning lights, anti-skid.
Taps of the nose wheel steering button here as the rudder is no longer effective. Drogue chute is kind of pulling her ass about a little bit. And since we don't want anybody to shout kneel before FOD, we will hang on to that chute for a minute. And leave it for our mythical and hypothetical chute monkeys that should be waiting here not far away from the old short line. Here you go, boys, hang on to that. And we'll bump our seat back down to its more normal level. It seems like a small thing, but bumping the seat up and down allows you to look down the nose of the aircraft when she's on AOA, when you're coming into land. Because otherwise you won't be able to see kind of where you're going there if you're down low in the seat. Alright, so let's go and grab more weapons. Now we do have a fire can down there, so I'm going to try and grab another Shrike that is tuned to kill the fire can. We'll try this one in loft and see how it works. Bring up some 82s. We'll get rid of the pave spike pod for now. turn on the air conditioning. And we got a minute while it refuels us up to 12,000 pounds of gas. Let's go ahead and take a walk over our zone and see kind of how we did. So our first GPU-10 that hit the target area, it's the second one that we released, landed pretty close by and rendered these guys into the past tense. Very dead shulkas. Some of our bombs for the M117s that we dropped, these we dropped going this direction and they went long. These we dropped going this direction and they kind of bounced over the top of this BMP that's kind of stuck here. But the one that I dropped in as a single practically went through the open top of this Sparka. And eliminated most of the battery and damaged the last one. Our gunburst eliminated a couple of the S60 batteries, damaged some of the KS-19s. Fire can still up. We'll see if we can kill that. I want to say this bomb here was our first GPU-10 that we dropped ballistically. And as you can kind of tell with that one, it went roughly the right distance. But because we were heavy on one side, we leaned over it a little bit, and our laser, if it found it, threw it a little off course. That said, it did blow up the barracks building that was here. That was another target. So at least it got something of value. There's that. Wasn't intended, though. And there's, of course, our victim du jour. Which took his Maverick medicine. With great joy. All right, so we do have some other targets out here, some MTLBs, which are very short and squat. Having stood next to one that had launchers on it because it's an SA-13, but it uses the same chassis. Of course, we got our lingering air defenses there. A couple more MTLBs. Hidden away BMPs. And one of the things that I do want to point out a little bit, and we might take a minute here to see its comparison over on Afghanistan, is it's kind of easy to see where things are. Mostly. Because the ground here, the map itself, NTTR is an older map. I like using it for a lot of training because it's home. And that kind of feels a little more right to use it that way. But its textures and texture quality really kind of show some of its age. And some of the lighting quality and dust effects and things like that are not present on this map where they are on others like Syria or Afghanistan or probably Iraq. I don't own that one yet because it's still only half a map. But we'll move to Afghanistan here in just a little while once we make another pass on this place and show the difference. We're almost there, but refilling that feeder tank takes a lot more time and effort. Than refilling the earlier ones did.
Canopy down and locked, lights out, and stripes aligned. You got it. Real alignment complete.
I'm flying around for a little bit, so I just had Jester fine align the alignment. Try and get us mostly back on target and target bound. This is a pretty skin.
Refueling complete. Overlord 1-1. Bra 043 450 at 13,000 gold. Rearming complete.
All right, we got weapons on board the jet again. Reset our head tracking. We'll be starting with the ARM here on that other pylon. It's in the loft. That means we're going to have to actually use the AGM 45 setting. Good times. Oops. It's going in the parking lot. We're not taking the fighter home today. Now, that'd be kind of wild to pull up on somebody's house and just have an F-4 parked in the driveway. Hey, Trigger. Alright, so we have Mr. Firecan who's still up there. We're going to try and drill him with the Shrike. I don't have high hopes for that, just for the record. And we got some targets there we can drop some bombs on.
Engine's good. Airspeed's coming alive. 50 knots. Speed 100. All right, I got nails, 8 o'clock.
A little heavier and a little more draggy with the 6 racks we're carrying now. Run out a little on the afterburner a little more. Get up to a decent flying speed. I will say that I've seen the Shrike track HQ7s using the same wavelength band as the straight flush with the SA6. So it can be used against systems that aren't listed there, but you have to be a lot more knowledgeable about what frequency bands the radar is using to fine-tune that one a little bit. Last night we were playing for a little while with everybody on Afghanistan, and I pitched a Shrike at an HQ7 site, and it missed, but it didn't miss by very much. And the white phosphorus marker really let me come back in there and drop iron bombs on them and finish it off. So, worked as intended. It's a good time. Part of why I was trying to come here today to share that knowledge with you while we were doing Pilum Teaches DCS. Alright, so we did our pave spike drops earlier. And we self-guided our laser-guided bombs onto the target. I'll climb it to about 15,000 feet here, and as long as we can pick up that fire can...
Alright, got a new bogey. Left 40, 27 miles, 21,000.
Hopefully we can engage it with the Shrike.
IFF's valid, that is a friendly.
I did hear a little chirp out of it earlier, so I'm hoping we will be able to find it again. Oh, there we go. There's a twitch. Oh, that's in the wrong direction. It could be that I strafed it and actually hit it hard enough that it stopped transmitting. He's not spinning. It's picking up a radar out there by Tonopah, I think. It might even be the CWR. But either way, we'll get a nice clean look at the fire can's general area. And if he's transmitting at all, we'll try the Shrike. Yeah, we're looking right at him, so...
Looking at a bogey, left 20, 30 miles, 15,000.
Not that that's going to go anywhere or do anything.
No IFF response here. Target is
At least it's off my wing. Alright, let's start with our heavier bomb load on the outer pylons. We'll reset ourselves back to DT. Yeah, that's lofting its way out into space. Way out over those hills. Pick the throttles up here just a little bit as we turn around. And put some Mark 82s over it. Just about right there.
Okay, captured.
Say that was a good hit. Go ahead and skirt out. And we'll come back around looking for more victims. So again, our procedure there for DT, it's a quick tap on the Jester contextual button. Because Jester, if you're flying with him, will automatically put the radar into its bore sight mode and to a 10-mile scan range. He's basically, when you tell him that, you're basically going, I want you to lock this spot on the ground, and we're going to use that for ranging information. So it doesn't have to be super precise with where you want the bombs to go, but it should be at about the same altitude as where you want the bombs to go. That's where it's getting your ranging info from. The more precise it is, the better. But if you just can't get the pipper exactly on the target that you want, if it's close enough, you'll get the job done. Alright, so we know that there are other friends kind of behind this building. We can see one of them right there. Captured.
And captured.
Ripple pair. Offset a little bit and try and look back around at him. Damage, but didn't quite kill him off, so we're going to come back and give him another pair. Eliminate the anti-aircraft threats that are here, so we can really kind of come over the top of this place with impunity.
And captured.
And I'm going to fly this one up and out. That was a little low. But those are both dead. Should have 4 more pairs of the 82s on board, and then we'll switch to the 750s. See what else we can knock out here. DT really does let one do some rapid attacks over an area where you don't have a whole lot of known targets. Very point and click. And without having to go into the bombing computer every time for something like direct mode.
Captured.
Check those targets. And a couple vehicles there on the hill by the looks of it. And we'll come in on them. We'll lose them in the canopy frame here, so we'll try and get through that quickly. And captured.
And captured.
There's one more damaged Sparka there. I don't have a whole lot of more impulses of the 82s left. Let's see what we got. We got a BMP tucked in behind that building. We got probably BMP tucked in behind that one. Those vehicles are dead. It's the one Sparka that's left. There's one of those two vehicles that's still up. We got a fair number of targets. Let's go ahead and bring our ripples down to 1. 6,000 pounds of gas, so we got plenty of playtime here. Try not to anger the AOA limiter there for a minute. That oral tone really does help out with letting you know how badly you're playing with physics.
Okay, captured.
Oh, we've only got one Mark 82 left, and then we're on 750s. All right. Let's make it count.
Captured.
So we probably damaged a few of them, but did finish them off. All right, let's go ahead and change our ripple to 3. Span the interval just a little bit. And if we could line up on it, we know that those T-55s are in that gray patch that does not have fire on it. Well, hopefully we could take a few of those out with our heavier bombs. Come right down the middle here on it. Captured.
Captured.
Ripple 3. 4,000 pounds. Some damage, couple bombs went long. Which is okay. Tells us that our ripple distance was a little long, but that's alright. Again, With older aircraft like the F-4, quantity is a quality all its own. Should have 2 more bombs left in that stick. We're going to run right down it again. And we will shorten up our distance. The biggest thing with a lot of the older aircraft like the F-4 is you want to try and make sure that you're flying it as sharply and as accurately as possible, which even delivering iron bombs in a modern aircraft like an F-16 or a 14 or a 15E, rip Razbam, the more accurate you fly for your iron bombs, the more accurate they will be when they get to the target. But even iron bombs aren't always going to go right exactly smack on where you want them to go. So send them in pairs. Give them to people who care. Alright, here we go.
And captured.
See how these do. Oh, they went very long and we were very fast. Okay, and that's it for all of our iron bombs. We should have a Maverick on board. Just gotta wait a little bit for it to become active, and then we'll quickly get that off the wing. RTB to Creech, and then we'll take a minute to look at Afghanistan as a comparison point for the desert here in Nevada and the much older NTTR map. And the definitely very fun to fly on high and hot land of Afghanistan. Just a minute or two here while these warm up. I'll try and cut back on the power here and save a little bit of gas as we're down to 2,400 pounds. That is on the right pylon. One of the biggest disadvantages of the Maverick with the F-4 in particular is if for whatever reason you have to walk away from the weapon system, you know, you get jumped by an aircraft, have to transition back to an air-to-air fight, suddenly find you need bombs instead of the Mavericks. At some point later when you go to use those again, you're going to have the same 3-minute spool time while the seeker head gets ready and all that. So they're kind of a weapon system that you have to commit to, and commit a little harder than you would on just about any other airframe. Like they're not kept in a standby mode. Alright, weapons ready. Let's select TV for our display. Go front trigger action. Adjust the brightness a bit. We're at 45 mils on our reticle setting, which should put the pipper roughly aligned to the Maverick seeker head. We're using a B model Maverick as indicated by the cross with 4 dots, which means that it is zoomed, and we can't change that zoom. Slew that around a little bit. There is a tank kind of right there. And rifle. And since it is fire and forget, we shall fire and forget about it. Make sure I'm not going to crash here as we turn back around towards Creech. Oh, it's going to wipe out a building. I targeted the wrong platform. That's okay. Alright, same thing. We'll return to base to Creech, take a quick survey of the area, and then we'll hop out and look at Afghanistan real fast. Just to kind of illustrate the differences between good quality map, bad quality, or not bad quality, but poorer quality map, older technology, and how hard it is to see certain things. It's part of the fun of hunting there. Now we got 1,900 pounds of gas, so we're going to be a lot more floaty coming home. The F4 really does feel that when you're cruising along. I mean, just about every aircraft will, so you know, it's not kind of an end-all be-all there on that one. But I've noticed with the F4 in particular, when she's very, very low fuel, you can really get her down to like 150 knots and she'll still be climbing away. And as we're coming back towards Creech, let's go ahead and prepare ourselves. We'll bump the seat up. Adjuster will take care of shutting the radar down as we get closer and put the gear down. Here's our runway. It's the unattended target range that we flew close to. Should have blue smoke. For those playing the game at home and watching and everything else, DCS is very much a game whose skills can erode over time. And they always erode faster than you think they will. Generally, I try and fly for a couple of hours at least once a week. And I will do something like this, where I'll come out here to this map, bump up, drop bombs and shoot weapons at targets for a little bit. Might practice air refueling. Really try and work on smoothing out landings, just to go through the entire basic skill set. Because if you're only flying once a week for a couple of hours, that's really kind of like bare minimum to maintain that skill set. You're actually trying to learn or do something new, you're going to want to try and go up more often, or to get back to a previous skill level. Because the muscle memory fades. And while you might remember the mechanics and the physics of what needs to happen when, and those things don't disappear quickly, you know, as long as you use them from time to time. Getting in and doing and feeling is definitely the way to go to keep those skills sharp. Few things are as wasteful as getting in with a bunch of people and having taken too much time away from the game with no time for a refam and then wasting everybody's time by not being able to work or perform at a skill level comparable to the rest of the group. But that's the way a lot of flight sims go. You know, it's not unique to DCS. And it's even a lot of ways that shooter games and things will go. You know, if you set a shooter game down for too long, you won't be as in tune to how things operate. But those skills seem to disappear at a slower rate than working and fighting with an aircraft, especially one in a sim like DCS where there's so much of it is simulated. Solid Tone is actually on AOA. Oh, we're gonna float. Not unrecoverable though. It's alright, Jester, I don't need you to say anything. Sometimes I prefer that he doesn't. It's a landing that is just good enough, but not so perfect that he tells you about how he just woke up from a nap. Or about how you cost a museum its museum piece. Alright, let's go and drop this down. Park this over here in this hangar, and that'll be a good time.
Roger. Yes, sir. Wheel chocks are in. Roger. And done. Okay. We're back home for a minute. Let's go ahead and survey the area. And we will take a look at some of the carnage we wrought today and the differences in the lower quality textures that are inherent within TTR, and keep that in mind when we move the map over to Afghanistan for its textures. Did damage some of these tanks, not sufficiently enough to cause them to be all smoky, but we did outright destroy one of the T-55s. Knocked out some buildings, damaged this BMP a little bit. It's got the white smoke kind of blowing up. This whole anti-aircraft battery is destroyed, including its radar. TLBs are gone. Damaged, but not sufficiently enough to cause it to smoke or smolder. Overall, a nice little pass there for single aircraft to 2 sweeps over this target area. Let's go ahead and jump out of this one for now. And we'll load up my current version for Game of Thirds. While I don't agree with ED's approach to releasing maps in component pieces in an attempt to kind of spur the cash grab, I can say that Afghanistan does look extremely pretty now that they have about half of it put together. It is a much larger map. So it's going to take a little bit to load as it unloads the smaller terrain there from NTTR. Some of the things that I do when I'm on the Pilum Teacher stream does include mission editor work, and if there are things that you want to see, please reach out to me, leave a message in the chat, something, and we can make it a point to focus on those things. But this is our Game of Thirds mission that we've got rolling. There are a lot of units that I have hidden, and others that I have not, but those will probably all end up hidden too as we gain further developments. But let's get in here and see the difference in trying to spot things on a map that uses all of the newer technology compared to one that was new back when DCS 2.6 was a thing. Those who've been playing DCS for a long enough period of time, that is definitely a trip in the Wayback Machine. Go take your ibuprofen, you probably need it. Still putting some things together, loading and doing the things. Does take a little bit to load there, especially the first time. Even with folks whose machines are more powerful than my own. All right, rather than jumping on an aircraft, we're just going to go right to spectators. Finish doing its thing here with some of the textures. We do have some enemy Tomcats that are up and out in patrol, but already just the ground textures and lighting all look much improved over the older technology associated with the NTTR map. And let's go out to a target area. We do a little bit of spot the things and stuff. Once it loads the textures anyway. Which might take it a minute or two longer than I'm used to because we're actually doing this on the stream at the same time and I haven't had time to preload it as we're doing a live demonstration. Okay, it's taking a good few minutes longer than I would like. It's okay. And just zip down here towards. We'll just wait for it to load. Sorry about the delay on that there, folks. There's a big map. Hey, there's some pieces of the world. wasn't using a lot of processing power for the stream, it would a little quicker on us, but you wouldn't be able to see it, and it's not as fun. All right, much better. Let's still load in the rest of all of those things. This town has a bunch of targets that are within it, and is one of our usual points that we come by and hit on this map. So as a comparison to the NTTR, before we close things out here for the day, I'm going to load the rest of the mountain textures here, and then we'll turn around and look at that zone. Okay. That is the town. We were about the same distance away from this town as we were earlier when we were scoping out parts of the NTTR. And while the sun is very low in the sky and it's producing something of a shadow type effect with the mountains, even still it is extremely difficult to pick out a vehicle or gun pit or whatever else as compared to the rest of the terrain, as it is a much higher quality than it is on the NTTR. For example, we have this convoy group. It's down here. Slower fine-tuned camera here as we get down low. And you can almost play, is it ARMA 3 or is it DCS? Except for the fact that that vehicle didn't go to space when it was collided with a civilian truck. But there's a convoy there. There's also these gun pits that blend in really well. There's infantry. Can you spot the air threat in this picture? I know what I'm looking for, and one of them should be easy to figure out. You can see two of them. There's one there. There's one there. A couple of ZU-23 pits. There's another one. Just waiting. Waiting on you. That's some of what I like about the Afghanistan map. In addition to, playing this one with a very high temperature setting, it's as high as I can make it out here, which is about 40 degrees Celsius, which is about 104 degrees Fahrenheit for those playing the non-metric game. The general altitude for this region is upwards of 8,000 feet. So, you know, your normal man-pad safe distance of like, oh, I'll just climb up to like 15,000 feet AGL or MSL rather. It'll be fine. It won't. You're only 7,000 feet higher. You're well within their reach. It's kind of that way through most of Afghanistan. But then another fun one that we have, just for, you know, continuing the game of spot the things, is down here by Kandahar, where I've got a bunch of stuff tucked into the urban center. It moved quite a bit on the map, so it's going to take a minute while it updates all the textures. But the urban centers here on this one are very different than some of the older maps that we've seen in DCS so far. Even some of the middle tier maps that we see now, and it's really kind of strange to say that Syria is a middle tier map because it is still extremely good and still extremely high on my list of things that I like to play. But this is the kind of detail and terrain that we're starting to see now, and I'm hoping that we see a very similar result with the Cold War West Germany one that we're getting here very soon. At least if the folks are on time. And they seem like they should be. We'll come up here and settle in next to this group. And they just all but disappear. They're right here. Sandbag earthworks. Little defensive positions. But you even get just a short distance away and take your eyes off of it for a minute, and you just lose it. So very good combined arms work here to be able to find targets, look for them, mark them in some fashion. I see smoke markers being used a lot more often. And aircraft that's got some staying power in the sky, really used a lot more often, like the Su-25 or the A-10, being used here with some of the folks from PI. But yeah, that's Afghanistan. That's the texture difference there, and trying to look for and spot targets compared to the NTTR, where they stand out like a sore thumb because it's low-res textures with high-res vehicles and things sitting on top of it. So it really just makes it stand out and jump all that much more. But I think that's where we're going to go ahead and wrap up this stream here for now. We do have some other ones that we're going to be doing later on. I'm actually planning on doing a little bit of an early start to my classic game stream that we're going to have coming up on Monday. But let's go ahead and wrap up the teaching lessons here for today. So we covered a few things with the F4. We covered use of the PAVE spike targeting pod and a lot of its limitations. We covered use of the Shrike. Didn't hit anything with the Shrike, but again, kind of par for the course with that weapon. With the Willie Pete charge that's on it now, you can at least get a marker in play, and as long as the weapon gets close, which they generally do. Sometimes they go way off into Narnia if you are flinging them either in a loft configuration where they are definitely going to go out and overshoot, unless you launch them within a very narrow window. Or at least if you try them indirect, they should be very close to the target area, and you can then reference the SAM site relative to the Willie P marker, and you've got a minute to get somebody's eyes on it to get in and attack the point. We also made use of the DT mode for a little bit of cast work and a little faster reaction, find it and bomb it type work with the F4, which was a lot of fun and good to go. And we talked a little bit about the countermeasures programs and being able to set those, where those are located in the jet, and how to make changes to them so that you're not just doing single impulses of flares and chaff. You can actually do a multiple impulse release, which can be a little more useful for you when you're in the middle of everything, trying to defend the aircraft. Good times there. So with that, I appreciate all the likes, all the follows, all the subscribes. Subscribing, of course, is not required, but in addition to helping you get out of ads free, well, not quite free, but you know what I mean, subscribers do have the added perk of being able to arrange time with me to go up and spend a little bit of time together in DCS and do some one-on-one learning, which is sometimes more helpful than doing something like this or watching videos on their own. It allows you to get a little more hands-on. So that is also a subscriber perk. If you have Amazon Prime, you do get one free Twitch subscription to a subscriber of your choice. So if you choose to spend your Bezos dollars here, they are happily welcome. I will always take his money. That's a good time. If you'd prefer to tip a little more directly, you can do that over at coffee.com/PilumJRomar. And we'll use that money for coffee. We've had a couple cups here today, which is always a good time. And catch this and other VODs on the YouTube channel at Pilum Romar. Appreciate the follow there, Pay Rage. As far as our usual week-to-week upcoming events, today was Saturday, which is Pilum Teaches DCS. We generally start that at 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And at the moment, we've been doing the F-4 in preparation for the Cold War Germany map, which we might see later on this month. That'd be exciting. Be looking forward to doing that and picking it up as a day one purchase and then doubling down and making a 1980s themed mission for it, which is always a good trip. Monday, we've got some general flying with DCS. We'll be joined by Mander, possibly Trigger, possibly iHort. I don't know. Be nice to see my friends up all that on that and doing the things, which is always a great time. That starts at 6 p.m. PDT on Monday night. We generally follow that with classic games sometime between 8:30 and 9. This week's classic game is one that's going to make a lot of people feel a little older than they ought to, I think, because it's the 5th game in the series that we've been playing, doing classic games, and have touched on a lot of the others. Arena, Daggerfall, Morrowind, and Oblivion, which means the next one that we're doing is Skyrim for a classic game released in 2011. Barely kind of fits the qualifier there, being a little more than 10 years old. So we're going to be doing that one with only as many mods as the Legendary Edition generally dumps on me. So we're not going to, it's going to be as fairly vanilla through the course of that one, which should be a good time. I'm not going to do it from scratch, because if I take a couple hours to do that on the stream, I will only just be dealing with the end of the dragon fight that you get right out of Whiterun. Especially if I'm not running that one full tilt, but that'll be a fun time. Friday's Arma 3, we're doing Antistasia with that one on the Viralathi map. It's been a lot of fun with that one too. That starts at 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And then Saturday we're back with more Pilum Teaches DCS, which will probably be following through more with the F4 and maybe do a little bit of air-to-air type work with it. And if we have manpower and resources, we'll see about arranging for some backseat time in that one as well. Not maybe next week, because that's too close to Easter, I believe. But in one of the future Pilum Teaches episodes, we'll go for the backseat and share my knowledge there with that one. With that, folks, always ask for consent. Try to communicate as best you can through partners. Try to be genuinely decent human beings. And I will catch up with you next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for following. Have a great rest of your day. Pilum out.